Hello, everybody, and welcome to the HeartWorking Dad podcast. I am your host, Gabriel Perez, and this is the podcast for Christian fathers who are looking to do the heart work in themselves with Jesus so that they can lead and transform the hearts of their family. I'm your host, Gabriel Perez. I am married to my wife 12 years. We have 3 kids, and my wife and I both work a full-time jobs, and we homeschool our kids. In addition to that, I am a certified biblical parenting coach from the National Center of Biblical Parenting Association. All right, there's a mouthful. Excuse me for a second. So, in this episode, I realized that I've talked a lot about just the heart of a man. My heart, the things I've been going through, the things that I've struggled with, the conversations I've had with God, how I've been walking with God. And some of you are like, man, this is a podcast for fathers, right? Because this just sounds like a Christian men's podcast. And I thought I'd just have to come back and I have to really get into the point of why I emphasize so much on my heart. And I believe it's because it is the first step into effectively leading our home. It is the first step in, working with our children. It's the first step in working, with your wife and parenting together. You have to deal with the issues of your heart. You have to be able to know when you are being insecure, when you're being selfish, when you're being prideful, or when you're just operating out of wounds from your past. I think we all have a sense of wounding that we may operate out of, our sense of false self, as John Eldredge would call it, where we're just used to making things work in this way. So when I talk about the heart, it is because working on my heart has been the single most impactful thing I've done in leading my family. Because then I'm able to come at them in a healthy perspective. I'm able to come at them with a right relationship with Jesus, knowing that Jesus is doing a work in me. So it humbles me to be able to do a work in my wife's heart and my children's hearts. And ultimately, it is Jesus that changes the heart. I don't change hearts, but I get to partner with him. And I believe as men we have a kingdom. We are a king of a kingdom, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the people within our kingdom are thriving. So I take it really seriously when I talk about the heart and the matters of the heart. And even as a biblical parenting coach, the book that is based off of Parenting is HeartWork, I love it. The first thing he says is, in order for us to actually really work on our kids' hearts, we have to work on our own hearts. We have to come from a better perspective. We have to understand, why are we getting so angry? Why are we getting frustrated? So that is why I focus a lot on my personal journey of doing heart work within myself, in hopes that you guys listening are doing the same thing, challenging yourself, finding new growth, finding time with God to challenge and grow your heart so that you can better effectively lead your family. I think that's what we all want. And we want to do it from a healthy perspective, not one of just, I am the head and you will follow my rule. So I thought I'd come on, give a little perspective on why I've been focusing. But then I also want to drop some nuggets of parenting too, because I was like, I can't just completely sidestep the idea of parenting, because it's important and it can be a struggle. The struggle is real. You know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But recently I saw this clip, and so now I can actually get into the episode. It was a really great clip, and I'm going to share it on my Instagram. So by the way, or my Facebook, follow me, Gabriel Perez _official on Instagram. I think just Gabriel Perez on Facebook. But it's this clip of this dad. He's got a clear cup of water, and he's like putting dirt in it. He says, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot. It's like, this is what happens when sin, or, the world gets into your child. We're trying, and he goes, and we try our best to help them out. And he goes, and this is like nitpicking instruction, and he's like trying to scoop out the dirt. He's trying to do all these different things to get the dirt out of the cup, and he's using it as different ways of parenting, like instruction, like yelling, big like what's that, when you're like being very like forceful on them to get it done. And he's just throwing out all these different things. Obviously I can't think of it right now, but so in the end he goes, but what always will help your kids is love. And he just pours more water into the cup, and as he pours more water into the cup, the dirt just comes out naturally. And man, it's such a beautiful example of how we should parent. And because love always has to be the starting point. I mean, even as a Christian, our faith, love is the starting point. Love your neighbor, love those who persecute, love God with all your heart. And so when we come at parenting from that basis, I think it's so important to understand also what that looks like tangibly. Because I think of the other side, we can look at it, and this is me speaking, that, oh, if I just love my kids so much, they're just gonna take advantage of it. And then they're not gonna know how to operate in this world when the world is tough, when the world is hard, and the world is cruel. They're not gonna know how to operate when they need to do their job under tough circumstances, or they need to operate under, someone who is, giving them a command. And, it's like, if we just always love our kids, they're not gonna be able to respond to the world a lot of times, or they'll be too soft. I know there's a lot of, like, as raising men, I think that's particularly the hardest, is because you want your son to grow up and be able to take on the world, to be able to be a man who can handle himself. And you think, well, that's not always done by just loving on him, loving on him, loving on him. But I think this is where we find the balance, is that it's not that we're just constantly saying, oh, it's okay, you made a mistake, I love you, it's okay. I think what it really is a condition of our heart when we are correcting our children, when we are teaching them a responsibility, because that's where it comes from. If we're coming from love, it's going to make a big impact. They're going to feel that love, and they're like, well, my dad's not doing it because he's angry at me. He's not doing it because he's frustrated. Because I think a lot of times we're doing it because we're frustrated. And I'm speaking for myself. I'm doing it because I'm irritated, because they may not be getting it, because I'm repeating myself. And so therefore the love aspect has been taken out of the correction. If I'm correcting my kid and and it's the 10th time I've corrected them, and I'm bitter, I'm frustrated, I'm angered, the love has been withdrawn. Does that make sense? And so it doesn't mean that we stop correcting our kids. It doesn't mean that we don't give them firm instructions. What it does mean is that we have to check where our heart is at. We have to check our heart and say, all right, am I coming at this in love, or am I coming at this in anger and bitterness? And I think when we do that, we can have a different way of speaking to our children. We can have a different way of communicating. And honestly, it doesn't just go for our children. It goes to our spouses. It goes to how we operate in this world as Christians. We have to check our heart. Say, is what I'm saying because I'm irritated, because I'm frustrated, or am I saying this because of love? So it's very important that, I think, when we look at these examples, we don't immediately pull back and say, well, that's just being too easygoing. Because for me, I grew up in a military style household. So I'm very used to being told, this is it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, you just obey and that's it. Whereas I think my kids feel they probably have a little more say. They want to communicate a little more. And it's easy for me to be, no, because I was raised this way. It's not as extreme, but it's still going to be there. but it doesn't have to be. But it just has to be that balance of where my heart is. Check your heart. So dads, my challenge to you is to check your heart. When you're communicating to your kids, check your heart. Where are you at? When you're responding to your wife, check your heart. Honestly, I am saying this to myself 10 times over. Check your heart. Because when we check our heart, it's going to help us recalibrate. Are we coming back? Are we responding in love? Are we responding back in anger, bitterness, resentment? Any of those. So the challenge for this episode, going into your home, into your marriage, check your heart. All right. And that's all I got for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you're listening to this podcast and you do find that you get value from it, please leave a rating. I would really much appreciate that. It would help the podcast grow, and would also love to hear from you. You can email me at HeartWorking Dad at gmail.com or follow me on my socials. All right, talk soon.